From the Atari age to the current console generation, many games have been immortalized in infamy after being universally panned, but not all of these offenders are as bad as the critics claim. I now present to you 7 of these supposedly terrible titles that don't deserve the hate. The Bothersome Bobcat is widely held to be one of the worst things that the industry produced in the 90s, but Bubsy and Claw's Encounters of the Third Kind is a surprisingly decent, albeit flawed, platformer. The hatred towards Acolyte's creation is fueled by flaws in the core mechanics and controls, as well as the titular hero's annoying personality and catchphrases.
More like a bridge too short. Hey, I thought I saw Elvis back there. Hey, whatever blows your hair back, shouldn't that be fearless? Uh-oh.
But I honestly believe that it's unjustified. The floaty controls take no more than a little practice to adjust to, and the animations that accompany the instant deaths are quite amusing. Plus, the eclectic soundtrack and highly detailed visuals that comprise the presentation are incredibly impressive despite its animal mascot roots. It may not possess the brilliance of Rocket Knight Adventures, but Bubsy definitely doesn't deserve its bottom feeder status.
What could possibly go wrong?
I'm sure a number of you are thinking that I'm crazy right now, and with good reason. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is a cryptic endurance match like no other. Bandai and Advanced Communication Company might as well have named this Walking Simulator 88, since the main premise centers around a man simply traveling to the church for his wedding. Jekyll is defenselessly bombarded by a mob of bloodthirsty townsfolk on his journey, and Hyde inevitably takes over when the doctor is stressed to the max. Jekyll and Hyde epitomizes the eternal struggle between good and evil, and it's been known to bore or break most gamers, but those that are able to invest themselves in it will appreciate the creepy atmosphere and inventive design. Factor in the multiple endings and it becomes clear that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is an unconventional but misunderstood gem whose innovation was unfairly ahead of its time. The NES was typically home to a variety of kid-friendly titles, but that didn't stop LJN and Atlas from bringing the R-rated Friday the 13th to Mario's turf. As per usual of LJN's licensed tie-ins, Friday the 13th was met with scorn and derision for being too hard and featuring a confusing map system, as well as not clearly explaining the objective. I can't argue about Atlas's failure to provide proper guidance, and I fully admit that I googled a few hints during the LJN Defender episode, but I was able to have fun and admire the great job that Atlas did of capturing the spirit of the franchise before I sought outside help. It may not be 100% faithful to the source material, and the graphics are a little too cartoony, but that's a big part of the appeal for me. Purple Jason is simultaneously silly and awesome, and I'm happy to have perler art of him guarding my collection. Friday the 13th is absolutely a difficult and slightly cryptic entry in Nintendo's 8-bit catalog, but its excellent music and spooky vibe put it leagues above a number of its licensed peers. It's hard to believe that a simple remake could receive so much hate, but that's exactly what happened when Turtles in Time Reshelled hit the Xbox Arcade and PlayStation Network. The Ubisoft update bears a passing resemblance to the Konami masterpiece, but the overall aesthetic is drastically different. The colors are muted and dull, and the music is boring and unmemorable, but the biggest criticism has to do with the missing Super Nintendo stages. Those who grew up with the home version complained about the lack of the Technodrome and Bebop and Rocksteady, but this was easily explained by the fact that Ubisoft based Reshelled off of the arcade cabinet. As someone who had never played the original arcade as a kid, I had no problems with the new experience, and I had a blast with the online co-op. To me, the pros of Reshelled far outweigh the cons, and while I would have preferred for the Konami release to be ported intact to the Xbox and PlayStation, I can still have a shell of a time with Reshelled. Going from one remake to another, 2010 Splatterhouse landed with a soft thud instead of the desired bang upon release. The familiar story of the Terror Mask bonding with Rick Taylor to save his girlfriend is retold, but the 2D side-scrolling format of the original is ditched in favor of 3D God of War-esque beat-em-up action, and the brutality is elevated to a whole new level. Blood constantly covers the screen in battle, and Rick can rip the heads and limbs from his enemies in spectacular fashion to the tunes of metal bands including Lamb of God and Mastodon. All of this paints the picture of a Splatterhouse fan's dream come true. However, the critics slammed this reboot because of technical issues such as occasional frame rate stutters, cheap AI, and long loading screens. IGN even gave it a 4 out of 10, and while that journalist is obviously allowed to score it however they want, I completely disagree. Splatterhouse 2010 is a bloody marvelous affair, and I strongly suggest that horror fans and gorehounds check it out. I'm sure my sanity's being questioned now, but I'm 100% sincere when I choose Sonic 06 as number 2. Released to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Sega's mascot, 2006's Sonic the Hedgehog initially hit the market as a nearly broken mess. Sonic Team apparently had to rush the production due to a looming deadline, which resulted in massive bugs and glitches, but apparently most of these were fixed for the Platinum Hits version. The play mechanics, at least in the Platinum Hits disc, are pretty solid, and I really enjoyed exploring Crisis City, Flame Core, and the rest of the stages as Shadow, Silver, and the titular protagonist. Do I consider 06 to be a great game? Of course not, and I can absolutely understand why it's heavily criticized. I think I'd even go as far as saying that the hate is justified for 06's original release, but not for the Platinum Hits version. If you have any interest in checking out this notorious title, that's definitely the way to do so. And the number 1 unfairly hated game is...
Mighty number 9!
Mighty Number 9 was intended to be the spiritual successor to Mega Man from the man largely responsible for the success of that franchise, Keiji Inafune. Side-scrolling junkies clamoring for another taste of the classic Capcom cash cow were excited about the potential offered by Beck and his allies, but what followed was a long line of disappointment and regret. A string of delays tested the patience of the backers, and the launch edition had a lot of problems that had to be patched. I'd heard of all the negative reviews, but I was pleasantly surprised to discover an experience that was in stark contrast to the press. This truly lived up to my expectations, and I haven't had this much enjoyment with a retro-inspired platformer since Shovel Knight. I'd of course be remiss not to mention that there were instances of slowdown and frame rate drops that remained even after the installation of the patch, but they in no way kept me from completing the quest, and since I've been told that the Wii U version that I played is the worst of the bunch, I can only imagine how much of an improvement the rest are. Long story short, Mighty Number 9 rocks, and I can't recommend it enough to retro fanatics of all ages. Inafune's Kickstarter disaster may have ranked around a 4.5 to the critics, but I'd rate it as a mighty number 7 out of 9. Anyway, that wraps up my list of unfairly hated games. Keep in mind that this is only my opinion. Feel free to respectfully disagree with any or all of my choices, and you can even leave your own in the comments. I love to read them, but before I can do that, I have another appearance in the IUPG court to prepare for. Be sure to come back for that, but until then, this is Matt, aka Cygnus Destroyer, signing out. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, click any of the boxes on the screen right now and you'll be able to watch a few more of my videos. And if you haven't already, be sure to click that red box right there in the corner and that'll subscribe to the channel and you'll be able to keep up to date with all of my current content. Thanks again, everyone.